this stream may not go on too long. I don't really have a tremendous amount to say unless something comes to me. So that's why I don't really have a title. But I just wanted to say, I just wanted to give a shout out for a lot of the new support that I've been feeling. I want to thank Chance Garton over at Interverse. It's been a while since me and him have worked together, and we haven't, that was one time a while ago, right? And so, other than life on Telegram, I occasionally get mentioned, and I'm grateful for that. But recently, I've been more highly complimented. So, just shout out to Interverse. Thank you, Chance, and of course, as always, thank you, Gabe. Shout outs to Dissident. I also want to give a shout out to my Shuri Adalani, who is a moderator who is around all of the chat rooms on YouTube and such. And she's been very cool with me, and she's promoted me in these various chat rooms and gives me a chance to express, yes, here's why she is promoting me. Here's something that I have actually, that I've done in particular that may be of interest to you. She did this last night on Old World, Florida. So I'm very grateful for that. Shout out Dr. Narco Longo. I was, if it wasn't a work night, I would have called in to the live show. But I would have had to prep myself for it, because Narco was he was ready to fight. He was ready to fight for his dietary lifestyle's moral position, and I basically just didn't want to touch it because I'm an omnivore, and at the same time, Narco might be right. He might be right. So I would have had to prep myself to be defensive of my appetite if was asked, because I know that he's cool. He doesn't fucking hate you or whatever if you're fairly carnivorous, but don't say he's right or he's wrong and you're right or something like that, without there being a vigorous debate, and I respect that. But so there you go. So yeah, so I was throwing some shout outs out there. It's also very interesting. There's been a decent amount of discussion in a handful of places as of late about the human skull in relationship to elongated skulls. There were I think there were 2 Old World, Florida videos that were done. So that's that just happens to be something that was produced around this time. But then also the Y-Files last night released a thing on the Neanderthal, which gets into the skull as well. And so I want to say that I heard it in one more place too, which turns it into kind of a solidified synchronicity. With all of this discussion about the Saturnian crown chakra, the hole in the head, and everything else. And I find that a fascinating prospect. It can be very difficult trying to wrap your head around the mind that you would have to have a full imagination of the period of time where seemingly human persons of elongated skulls were like the regular. They were leaders. I don't know if all of them were fucking leaders, but many were leaders. I've heard rumors that the untampered Cro-Magnon skull is merely an elongated skull, and but they broke it or something. Like the idea was that they broke it to make it appear otherwise. I'm not. I don't remember. I remember reading up about how they covered up X, Y, and Z things. All right. So. But as we continue to dive into it, as we start to realize there's more archaeological evidence that has been out there for a while, the more you realize that there are more answers to be found, and a picture becomes clearer and clearer. And sometimes you're barely off on how it actually was. You might have like one detail off, and then the depiction of the world as somebody finally like decides to paint a picture, write a short story, make a mini series that features it or whatever. It'll be like perfect except this, right? It's kind of like 2001: A Space Odyssey was just like something else, and then which I think was based on an Arthur C. Clarke book, but they changed the detail of the obelisk because the obelisk it had a different shape. Shoot, I can't remember the shape of the obelisk that it was based on in the book, but then they specifically made it into the obelisk that we know in the film because we're using it right now for telecommunication. It's your obsidian slab, 16:9 ratio that emits a signal. Right? Yeah. So, the obelisk is here, and we're just monkeys banging stones and rocks together. Gotta love it. Gotta love the atheist cosmology. It's so fucking insulting. But anyway, how you doing, Nicholas? Grand Rising. Snow just started. It's supposed to snow for just a couple of hours. Anyway. So yeah, the cover-up of antiquity, different levels of antiquity, because we're talking about the cover-ups of 100 years ago to the cover-ups of 500 years ago. I think it's so hard for us to wrap our heads around because we forgot the kind of conversation as a society that we were having, right? Like, it was a very interesting scientific world that held with the media. That was in there paving the pathway of the proper frame of reference for the human mind, with all of a sudden the great scientific consensuses of evolution and gravity and germ theory and extinction, the moon, and electricity, like all this shit popping up end of the 1800s, right? All this shit, right? This stuff was of high interest. And somebody won an argument. Even if the argument was based on a false premise, they still won. Because any other proposition had an inferior presentation, and the only thing that matters is the public acceptance, because that's where the money's going to flow. And thus the scientific consensus that we live with today that sits there and says it isn't possible to be scientific and hold up a hypothesis that the Earth is flat. Right? That's how it works. Right? Scientific consensus says flat Earth hypothesis is bollocks. And then they never go and they tell you what made it bollocks. Never looked through the processes by which the debunking of its time was done. And then we wonder why we still have flat earthers, because we think we were given a satisfied argument. And that's all that it really is. And it's just playing on the excuse that because this person has a hypothesis, because they certainly are making the argument that the Earth is not a certain thing, but it's better and makes a better argument if you have something that is instead of a demonstration of something that is not. Because then you're leaving someone on a path. Now, also leading someone on a path is highly manipulative, and maybe that's the right move, but it's best to try and work out a process that even if the test results don't conclude your hypothesis, they at least reinforce your hunch that the hypothesis that you're challenging is wrong. Because your scientific test should test the thing, because that's where the money is, it's in the test. Should test the thing that is going to settle whether some, point of debate can be settled within the greater discussion of what you think something may be. Right? We've been using the word conspiracy theory to the point of destroying science, because now nobody feels comfortable walking around with a fucking hypothesis about anything anymore, because they don't want to feel fucking stupid. And the only thing you can really do about that is just find your ability to stand up despite being thought of as stupid. Right? To say I am comfortable not having the social credit of these people under my account. Because you gotta go and you gotta work with the information you get in your field. Your informed field is very important to you and to that other person. The informed field is where cognitive dissonance happens. I'm always looking out for where cognitive dissonance arises in me and then meditating on it. So that way I don't start believing things that are untrue and delving into madness. Because what ultimately happens is that I am delineating how much does this fact threaten me? How much does this claim of what of this particular fact that I have a relationship with affect me? Can I divorce it once I'm convinced that it truly is a lie? These are the deep questions that I ask myself, especially with the rabbit holes that I'm about, that my channel is in part about. And the only thing that makes it unfun is when I'm excited to share something from my corner of what might be ignorance to you. but I'm exploring a world. And, you know, sue me. You can see 20 million holes in it that I can't. Sue me. You need to have a rational conversation, because at the end of the day, it's a question of, is what I am doing with what I think and what I believe or how I feel, is what I am doing that I bother to share with everybody or share with you, is it productive? Is it helpful? Does it serve a purpose for me or for you or for everyone or whatever? What am I doing? So, that's all I ask. Is that I be respected on a base psychological level as a human being. Steve, what, you think the earth is flat? Right? I know, I'm not the last guy to make these arguments to defend their integrity and their self-respect and all that shit when they're doing a thing and then talking about it and saying, oh yeah, flat earth. And for the most part, I'm just using flat earth as an argument, as an example, right? For the sake of the argument. Because I don't really think about it anymore, because I don't spend a lot of time thinking about outer space anymore. I don't really spend a lot of time thinking about alien worlds anymore. It creates too much unhealthy longing in the soul for something that exists within you anyway. So I go within. Because what's the difference between the land of the elves that I can use magic to access versus the land of the aliens where I can do a CE5 meditation and have a fucking, you know, enlightened conversation with Klaatu. You know, it's but what I do know is that it feels right that there's some sort of belief structure, framing mechanism to help you digest the presence and interaction with the messenger itself. Right? That's why you always hear these different things when it comes to interdimensional things or gods or whatnot. It's just like, I am appearing to you as human because it is something that your mind can understand and accept, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, because really you're a terrible tentacle monster. You know, you're a benevolent Lovecraftian tentacle monster. The very few quote-unquote benevolent ones that kind of exist, some of which weren't really written by Lovecraft. And which were much more later things. But anyway, either way, I think I'm just gonna get to work now. And I will catch you guys soon.